felt that it was important that we listen to the neighborhood and their representatives, so we met with the neighborhood coordinators on August 27th. And then Dr. Lewis had requested a meeting on site at the school, and we met with Dr. Lewis and several of his representatives, and the city manager and staff were included, and we kind of did a route around the neighborhood and looked at the parking issues. On September 8th, we had a public meeting here in the council chambers, and we had several counselors that were present at that meeting. I will say it was well represented. There was over 35 that signed in, so I'd guess there was probably at least 50 people there. There were school board members, Dr. Lewis and several of his staff members were there, staff from engineering, Metra, city manager's office, parents, students, neighborhood, so it had a good cross-section for a good meeting. These were the three primary issues that we had heard from the residents. One was the noise during activities and special events, and they have some kind of communication between the school and the neighborhood on notifying them when there's going to be a special event where there might be noise that they're not accustomed to, if they're having a dance with a band or something like that. Or during baseball practice, sometimes the music gets turned up too loud. The coordinators have the phone number to the coach, and they can call the coach and tell them to turn the music down. So that's a communication thing. They had complained about trash. Dr. Lewis did say that they were purchasing trash bins and putting them around the property so that they're, and instructing the students to use that. And then the primary concern, of course, that's been discussed at council and at the meeting was the parking in front of the residences. We presented three basically plans to the residents just to get feedback from them. One was the Lake Bottom Parking Management Plan, which is what we presented to council, where we would restrict parking and the neighbors would have to buy permits and so forth. The second one would be to leave the parking along Cherokee north of 17th, which is what they're doing today, and then look at some alternative parking locations. And then three would be to do nothing. We do still think there's some additional signing and striping that need to be done regardless of what we do. And of course, this is what we presented to council about the parking management plan. And this is the general area. The area outlined in red is the area that you see that we would propose to implement this plan in. And the alternative parking locations. Of course, the caveat would be that we could continue the student parking along Cherokee north of 17th Street. And it was agreed that it made sense that we would continue student parking along the west curb of Forest Avenue for the limits of the Muskogee County School District property, because that really wasn't impacting the residents. And these were the additional spaces. Councilor Allen had requested at one of the meetings to look at Cherokee Avenue on the east side of Cherokee Avenue north of 17th, and we could pick up approximately 10 spaces there. If we allowed student parking around the park south of 17th along Cherokee Avenue, there's about 74 spaces, and we're getting 10 to 12 students that are parking there now. And if we went to the 18th Avenue side of the park, there's approximately 81 spaces there. We do still feel like there should be some restrictions around the park so that we have available parking for citizens that want to use the park. There are several groups that use the park for physical activities, taking children to the playground, sporting events, that sort of thing. We had been requested to look at some additional on public properties, and so we looked at Troop Street, and I'll show you photos of these in just a second, and a small parking lot in Wildwood Park. That's a big park, natural park, and we looked at that and thought, well, maybe we could construct, or somebody could construct, a parking lot that would be small, and we would propose, if this was done, that it would be a natural park, similar to what we did at the dog park down off of South Lumpkin Road, where it looks like a grassed field. It's not paved. It has pervious surfaces in it. These are the 10 spots on Cherokee Avenue that we talked about. 12 on Troop Street, you're only getting a couple of cars right now, but that will probably pick up as the year goes along. We could construct a angle parking area, if you will, with minimal impact. That is like a little mini park right there with landscaping. I will say that this was not popular with the residents. And this is what we would propose into Wildwood Park. Again, it would be natural, and of course this was not real popular as well. As a result, we had surveys that were turned in from, again, a cross-section. Some of these were residents of the area, some of these were outside the area, students and parents and teachers and others. 5 selected the Lake Bottom Parking Management Plan. I think most of these were the residents in the area. 2 selected the alternative parking locations, to look at alternative parking locations, but they were reluctant about the 2 on Troop and Wildwood. 5 selected leave it as it is, don't do anything else, leave the students be. 4 selected Muskogee County School District to build a parking deck, and of course we talked about that, and we all agreed that even if that was the solution, that's a long-term solution. That's not something that could be done in a short term. And then 2 were basically uncommitted. I will say this, everybody in the room was concerned about the students and what happens with the students and where they have to park and the proximity of where they might have to park to the school. I will say that everybody was very concerned about that. Dr. Lewis noted at that meeting, and I had another conversation with Dr. Lewis last week, they are in discussions with an adjoining property owner in the area about the potential of constructing a parking lot of approximately 50 spaces. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that proposal. So this is just kind of the update, and I will have a handout, and it has a copy of the summary of the survey that we did, as well as a synopsis of the citizens that got up and spoke at the meeting. Any questions?
Yes, we have Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Not really a question, just a comment. I want to commend the staff on the work that went into developing a couple of different options, and then the way they were presented at the meeting. I attended the meeting, and the interesting thing is this is a very emotional issue. I mean, even when I was going to Columbus High School, we had to park our horses under the tree down there. But I think after listening, I mean, there's such strong emotions on each side that I think what the school district's doing in talking to the students and encouraging them to be a little bit more attentive in case trash blows out of their cars, that's going to solve some of it. But I favor I don't like the term do nothing, but I favor kind of keeping it status quo with the exception of, as y'all pointed out, some additional striping and signage. To me, if you stripe it and put some kind of visible notification that you can't get any closer than this to the intersections, because that's a danger, and then any closer than a certain distance from the driveways. And I talked with the property owner, and I think that's a very real possibility. So the few that you might lose from encouraging them to park 5 feet from driveways, 10 feet from intersections, I think you can make up for there. I would rather see us do that. And the third component of that, though, I think, is the enforcement. I think if, in the event, one of the students elects they're running late and they park and block somebody's driveway, my recommendation is not a ticket, it's tow them. I mean, you don't have to do it but once, and that kid, they're not going to park there again. The biggest problem to me is from some of these people that live there not being able to get out of their driveways. And I don't think that happens often, but I think if you post the signs and stripe it to tell them to stay a certain distance away, I think it's okay. I think it'll resolve itself.
Okay. All right, we have Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with Councilor Henderson, but I was going to say, I favor do nothing with the exception of if a child blocks a driveway, we need to send out beforehand a notice to every student that's driving. If you block a driveway, I was going to say be ticketed, but I don't have any problems with towing. tell them that their cars will be towed. And they have it in writing, everybody who has a car. Because I assume the school gives them some kind of decal on their cars.
I think those that park in the parking lot have decals. I'm not sure about those students that park on the street. And I think it would require an ordinance change, Lisa or Willie, as far as you can't just automatically tow a vehicle. I think it would require an ordinance change in order to do that. But
And I think one of the ways we could do that is they should have to register with the school if they're driving a car to school and get some kind of decal. And then you know if it's Columbus High School students blocking the driveway or if it's some other folks blocking the driveway. But give them something in writing up front. If you block it, this is what's going to happen.
that makes sense.
Okay. All right. We have next Counselor Thomas.
I've also had several conversations with people in and around that area, and I agree with Councilor Henderson. They're very emotional about this issue. But one of the things that was brought up to me several times was the enforcement piece. And they said they know that if we have the Columbus Police Department do an intensive sweep, it'll last a month or so, and then they'll go back to their old ways. Well, then do it again and ticket them and/or tow them. I really like what the Mayor Pro Tem is saying, and I believe that we could get some cooperation from the school district and Columbus High School to, put out a blanket notice to all of those students. Here are the rules. And if you violate these rules, you will either get ticketed or you'll get towed or you'll get whatever. Somebody said to me, well, you're not going to tow a student's car. I said, they'd tow my car. If it were me blocking their driveway, yeah, we would, I think that's what we need to do is to work with the school district and make sure that everybody knows the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, then the Columbus Police Department has the authority to handle your disregard of the rules. Thank you.
I just want to say I once got a parking ticket because Mayor Weatherington invited me to the government center and had a meeting that I had to wait 1 hour and 58 minutes to meet with him, and they gave me a parking ticket. And I had to pay it, I just want to say. Councilor Barnes.
Councilor McDaniel and I were confronted with this. Councilor McDaniel and I were confronted with this situation, and enforcement is the key. That was a very emotional meeting, but I think the general consensus, even among the residents who feel that they have a problem, is that they didn't want to have the students punished in any way. The students are taxpayers, parents are, so they didn't feel that restricting them in places for them to park was fair. And I'm agreeing with that. And I think that enforcement, I do believe that the additional signage and whatever would help. But that was the general, even though it was a very emotional meeting, through it all, and I think did you get the consensus? They didn't want the students punished in any way. So I think my tendency is really do nothing but additional signage and coupled with enforcement.
Got Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go ahead and ask the City Attorney's Office to draft up whatever changes we need in conjunction with the traffic engineer to allow the towing. I think you're only going to probably have to tow one car, and then the message will be sent. So, but if that's as far as we have to go, I think that'll be worthwhile.
Or they can boot it, put that boot on.
All right, that's a referral to the City Attorney's office, and we've got Councilor Henderson with further discussion.
No, and I don't disagree, but I think it needs to be done in conjunction with the evaluation of how far they should be parking away from the driveways and the intersections. Let's do an information piece first and make sure it goes home with the kids. Because it was my idea, and I know I'm going to catch heck for it, but I do think particularly if we make through a negotiation with a private landowner another 40 to 50 spaces. I don't think we'll lose that many by giving up enough space for people to get in and out. But I do think that once provisions are made, and if we allow them to continue to park there, you're only asking for them to do things that are going to increase and enhance public safety. So I do agree that we need to go ahead and initiate that process, but I would like it to be, before we start acting on it, coupled with the information piece and the restriping so they'll know what the parameters are.
Right, we would have to do the restriping before you could enforce it anyway, otherwise they wouldn't know
Right.
exactly where those limits
agree.
are. It would require an ordinance, I think.
Do you need any kind of guidance in terms of a resolution or ordinance in order to begin evaluating the safe distance from the driveways?
No, we have
As long as
standards
you're
on that, I
administrating?
think, because
Okay,
we've
I've
done that
already-
in other locations.
Motion to do that? No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, I
There's
just
gonna be a
looked
lot
up
of
and saw it was
headlines.
almost 8 o'clock, and that explained everything. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a referral to the city attorney's office, a request for some additional efforts and notice and so forth, and then hopefully that'll be coming back to council promptly for a resolution, a balanced resolution, the best kind. All right, so I think, Pam, that leaves swimming pool.
Two more.
Okay.
Next update is on the swimming pool for the Columbus Aquatic Center with Dr. Worsley. And as council knows, the Parks and Rec Department has been operating the facility for the last several months, and this is just to bring you up to date on where we're at this point.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'll be brief. I know you all are tired, so I will be brief tonight as I bring forth this update. This is, again, as Deputy City Manager Hodge said, this is an update regarding the Columbus Aquatic Center and where we are in terms of the RFP process. I would like you to know that bids have come back to the purchasing department. The top two vendors were given the opportunity over the last few weeks to present to the RFP committee, and also the top two proposals, unfortunately, were higher than what is currently budgeted for the CAC, the Columbus Aquatic Center. I do know that the committee is currently working with the purchasing staff on negotiations with one of the vendors currently, and more information should be ready for that shortly. Well, you may ask, what is the current budget for the Columbus Aquatic Center? Let me provide you that answer. It is $655,800. This is the amount that was paid to the last vendor, so that is what we are budgeted for the Columbus Aquatic Center. $170,000 is what we Parks and Recreation pays in utilities, so that's a total of $825,000 what we are currently budgeted for in totality for the Columbus Aquatic Center. Well, one other question comes to mind: what is needed to operate within the budget as it relates to the vendor's proposal? Glad you asked. That information, we will not fully know that information until the negotiations are over. However, services and hours will be severely decreased as we go forth, just from previous conversations and sitting in and listening to the meetings for the committee itself. I do know that the current proposal and the information that we are seeking, the services that we desire, are much more than the $650,000 that we have budgeted for this. But again, we are still in negotiations with this vendor, and we hope that they will come down off that price. There's no guarantee. Well, another question that comes to mind: what is needed to operate within the budget as it relates to the city maintaining operations of the Columbus Aquatic Center as well? Because it comes to mind to say, well, what if we are unable to come to an agreement with the current proposed vendor? Then what do we do? So these are some of the things that would be needed in order for us to operate. But if the city maintained the Columbus Aquatic Center, we would need to decrease our operational hours. We're currently operating at 89 hours per week. In order to bring that in to operate in a sufficient and viable fund, we would need to go to 56 hours per week. Changes in operation hours would, of course, negatively impact our consumer base, our swim teams, our member holders, and the like. We would have limited staff than what we would have if we were operating at 89 hours per week. And of course, programs will be limited as well as what we would be able to offer. We wouldn't have concessions available. We would maintain the vendors on the foyer level, the first floor, which are currently in the facility now. And we would not have the pro shop available as it is not available now during the interim period either. But this is just some thought as to where we are, thinking about where we might need to go for the future, and to let you know that the Parks and Recreation Department has thought about that, and there's no easy answer to get us to the end of the day. But I would like to take this time to compliment particularly two of our staff members, our Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, Holly Browder, and our Finance Manager, Becky Glisson, who is not currently here tonight. She's elsewhere working at a conference. But I want to recognize these two individuals because they have a full-time job as Assistant Parks and Recreation Director and a full-time job as a Finance Manager. However, in the interim period, these two individuals have worked tirelessly to operate the facility at the Columbus Aquatic Center with the part-time staff there as well. We cannot continue to do that. We're going to have to, we've been working as hard as we can during this interim period, but we are living on borrowed time as it comes to working these employees double duty and sometimes triple duty. So we're going to be faced with some hard-making decisions as a Parks Department and as a council as to what we're going to be looking to do in the future. I'd like to pause at this point to ask if there are any questions.
Yes, we have several. We have Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Worsley, what's the number of annual swim meets that occur at the Aquatic Center?
We have had, since the facility has opened, we average about, if I'm not mistaken, the hard numbers, and Holly, you can come forward and help me with this. I think we've averaged about 4 or 5 a year so far. That's correct.
A year?
A year? I mean,
That's correct.
I think when we had our discussions about and council, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we were looking at upward of 10 to 12 a year.
Well, part of that is if we are able to get the swim meets, do they come here? The swim meets that currently come here that we've had the most with has been with the Columbus Hurricanes. They have a number of swim meets that we have hosted for them. We have also had the opportunity to host for the high schools as well. Last winter was the last one I remember them hosting a swim meet last December, I believe it was. But it's been about 4 or 5 a year, 6 at the most, if you include the one we had this past weekend, a week ago perhaps.
Well, that's concerning to me, and I would like to see if there's a way that you could move that number higher.
Right. It's concerning to me too, Councilor Allen, and more so, I think much of it goes to having the staff to be able to, one, market. We have very few marketing dollars for this. We have also worked with the Sports Council to help us with this because that's one of the things that they are really good at is bringing in tournaments to the city. And so we've been in conversation with the Sports Council as well to see how we can go about bringing more swim meets to the city. And then even moreover, we have also reached out to the Georgia Recreation Parks Association because there's opportunity to participate in swim meets with them as well. And so we do participate in the bidding process for that.
Could you come back in 60 days with a plan for next year?
Sure.
For swim meets? I mean, I'm envisioning a partnership between you and the swim teams and other interested parties in the city.
Sure.
Whoever you envision that being. But if we are thinking of cutting hours, I would like for us to do all we can before we get to that point.
Right.
And I'm not convinced we've done all we can yet.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have next Counselor Thomas.
Dr. Worsley, on the slide that you had there, what is needed to operate within the budget.
Which slide? The one
this
for
one,
the, okay.
This one that you've got up there now. Are all of those things needed in order to operate within the budget, or some combination of those things?
We need all these things to operate within the budget. What I'm saying here on this particular slide, there will be a decrease or limited programs. We would have these things, but it will be limited, less than what we currently have as we operate 89 hours.
So in order to operate within the budget, we're going to have to decrease the hours. We're going to have to limit the staff. We're going to have to limit programs. We're going to have no concessions and no pro shop. Is that right?
That's correct. And of course, that has a residual effect, which also correlates, going back to Councilor Allen's point of where is our revenue. So when these things decrease, you also are looking at decreasing in revenue. So if I can put some numbers here, when we operate at 89 hours per week, last year's revenue was right around about $200,000, give or take. So if we're decreasing the number of hours that we're going to be operating and limiting the services, you can foreshadow that there will be a decrease in projected revenue as well, which is not a good thing, and that's not what any of us want in the Parks and Recreation Department or with this city government. But we do have challenges that we are faced with.
And one other question, Dr. Worsley. I don't want you to give me an exact number, but you were saying that the vendor that you're talking with is much more expensive than what we have budgeted. Are we looking at twice what we budgeted, time and a half what we budgeted?
At this point in time, we're still in the middle of the RFP process, so it's not appropriate for us to release any of that information until we come forward with a recommendation.
I understand that, but it's very difficult for me to make some of these kinds of decisions if, we're saying we've got a $655,000. If we have to do twice that or somewhere between, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Hodgen, and it's hard to deal with that, okay?
I understand, and we can come back when we bring back a recommendation. We can come back with varying levels of service so that you'll be able to know at 56 hours, this is what we can afford. At 75 hours, this is how much it would cost us and require additional appropriation from council. And at 89 hours, this is the amount. When we get to that point that we've worked out negotiations with the contractor to see what we can negotiate with them, we can bring that information back to council.
Thank you.
All right. Richard, I think somebody set off the alarm in the back, just FYI. Let's see. Next we have Councilor Barnes.
Dr. Worsley, I think it's really commendable that I know that there's two individuals, Ms. Glisson and Holly, and some of the other staff, that none of the operation hours have been decreased. We have not heard any complaints about the chlorine or anything like that from anyone. And so I know that your staff, I think, for the time that this hiatus has been, has done a remarkable job in having this amenity, which the citizens truly appreciate. I see all types of individuals come. I see individuals whom in this community whom I know are very affluent using the natatorium, and I see individuals that I know they come from single-parent homes, mothers with 5 or 6 children being able to use it. That's a big thing for us in Columbus. I know it's the talk of the natatorium is not bringing enough money in and whatever, and I understand what some of my fellow councilors are saying from a fiscal standpoint, that we do need to cross that bridge where the natatorium will really be self-sufficient. Well, we'll be running in the black. But I think for your staff to have the natatorium run as efficiently as it has run with the termination of that company is commendable. And I spend a lot of time. I don't always come in this building, but I do go in there, and I do know, and I'm on the street, and I hear from individuals. You all have done a marvelous job with that. And the citizens truly appreciate. I know it's been strenuous and somewhat onerous for you to do it, but the citizens, from the standpoint of the citizens, I appreciate what you and your staff have been doing.
Okay. Thank you so much. I do have a question, just so that my department has clarity on what we are doing as we move forward, as this is very serious business. Regardless of what the proposal amount comes back as, we want to make sure that you want us to bring back that amount, regardless if it's within budget or over budget. You want us to come and present that information to you. Is that a yes or no? Yes. Okay.
I would imagine you need to propose which is your best judgment and several options, and allow the councilors then to provide direction among A, B, and C, for instance, and the cost. They can weigh the cost-benefit analysis of that. Let's see, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I was in Regional Development Corporation meeting, and a gentleman who lived outside of Muscogee County came up to me and he said, "You all need to let Parks and Rec run the natatorium." And he said that that people from his community they come to Columbus to use the natatorium, and he feels safe bringing his grandson to our pool. Since the staff has been running it, he said there have not been any issues with the chlorine. He said, y'all go back and get somebody from outside, you're going to have the same problems that you had before. But you don't really have the control that you have in-house. So it was more of a statement than a question.
Thank you.
All right, we have Counselor Davis.
Well, I think we did have an issue there a while back with the chlorine, didn't we?
Let me clarify that, because I heard the public agenda as well. The issue that we had was mechanical, so the statement that was made earlier during public agenda was not accurate. It was due to mechanical, which was, yes, to answer your question, was chlorine related, but was mechanical.
Right, and I think that's what everybody's been saying from day one, mechanical.
But I do want to make the distinction that it's not staff related, because staff don't know what they're doing. Staff is well trained. It is the mechanical issues. You have to bring in people from the outside to fix those mechanical
Right, and
issues.
that's what the prior management company said the same thing to us when they came and gave us their opportunity to share with us why they weren't meeting the standards. But have we talked to the YMCA at all and just discussed how they go about their operations, whether here or in other areas around the country?
Not I'm aware of recently. I have not been in discussion with the YMCA's. I remember when we were gathering information in terms of the business plan. Before we opened the facility, we were in conversations with not only the YMCA's but other like facilities in other cities as how they operate.
Well, and Mayor,
As well
that
as
might be
colleges.
wise to try to strike up a dialogue with some of the, with the YMCA and just to maybe explore possibilities there. What I would like to see is actually I know when you go online you can only look so far, but I think the Parks and Recs Department can do a little more detailed study in the southeast of how these similar or comparable facilities are being ran and who they're being ran by and how they're operated. I'd like to see that. I said from day one, I know that when the RFP went out, there were some certain standards that we were holding these proposals to, or the management companies doing the proposals, but I think there were other possibilities there if we would have expanded some of those requirements, especially on the lifeguard side. And I wish that we would explore that a little bit more. I may be in the minority on that, but I wish that was done to broaden the possibilities. You never know. I mean, that's what we're looking at, is trying to find the best possible option. But the only way you can do that is broaden your horizons a little bit and just to further explore what's available.
We have Counselor Barnes.
Referring back to my previous statement, that there has been a problem since Parks and Recs has been doing it, I'd like to make a referral. I would like I know you've come to us before, but it was before this period where you've done such a marvelous job, your staff. And like I said, I know there's been a lot of hours that Holly Brown has put in and Ms. Glisson have put in for this, and other individuals during your staff working over. I'd like to have you bring back here to this council a conservative estimate of piggybacking on what the Mayor Pro Tem said, of what it would take for Parks and Recs to operate it versus whatever contract information you have. The reason I'm saying that, it's interesting that with the present staff that you have, that you've been able to have that operation run with no flaws and everybody happy. I haven't heard not one thing. And I've talked to a number of individuals leaving. I said, how was your experience? How was it? They think it's marvelous. And I'm going to be honest with you, because This is in my district, and it's a big town. Everyone can come, easily accessible. You get all kinds of individuals come. And to have a facility run by the city that everyone enjoys and not hear a peep after the catastrophic events prior, to me is a breath of fresh air. I love to see our citizens enjoy an amenity that we have, that we provide for them. So this is a referral. If you could bring back here to me what would be a conservative estimate if Parks and Rec ran it.
Yes, sir. And if it pleases you, sir, if we can bring that at the same time we bring forth the proposal at one time, is that okay?
Say
Bring
again?
bring both at the same time so you can have a comparison?
Yeah, yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay. Counselor Henderson.
In conjunction with that, I don't really want the city getting involved in the marketing. I think that's going to add additional personnel. Contact the sports council and ask them to participate in that presentation from a perspective of marketing, and let us know if that request is met with any hesitancy at all.
Okay.
Please.
At the presentation that we do for...
Yes, sir. I think it needs to be part of the presentation because I think if I read between the lines of what Councilor Allen was saying, 4 meets a year is ridiculous. We were urged to add more seats so that we could draw regional meets and told we were going to get 10 to 12 a year. And I'm not saying this falls on y'all. I'm just saying that to have that facility specifically designed to attract regional meets, to broaden the opportunities to fill that place, that's unacceptable. And I don't want to point fingers. I don't even want to ask questions that act like I'm pointing fingers. But I certainly think the Sports Council needs to be an active component of our pursuit of some of these things.
All right. Thank you. Well, that looks like it concludes discussion. Dr. Worsley, thank you so much, and it looks like you have several referrals there, so we look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
you back soon.
Mayor, if I just may
Yes.
close with this, the swim, Learn to Swim program started off this week, very excellent, last week, excuse me, and it will conclude with the first school this coming Friday. We'll have their little graduation starting at 6 o'clock, and you are welcome to attend at the Columbus Aquatic Center.
Cute. Great. Thank you. All right.
The last presentation on the city manager's agenda is to discuss the public agenda recommendations.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This presentation will be brief. We were asked to take a look at the current process of the public agenda and to come up with some criteria for future considerations of our public agenda. If you recall, back in October of 2014, I did a presentation that dealt with city council meeting analysis. In that analysis, it talked about the length of the council meetings, both prior to and after the new structure was set up. And when we talk about the new structure, I'm talking about the fact that we have the first Tuesday meeting as a proclamation meeting, the second and fourth as a business meeting, the fifth as a work session, then of course the third meeting we do not have a meeting. And so that's that new structure that we have. And prior to that new structure going in place back in around 2008 or so, the average length of the meetings were about 2 hours, 71 minutes. And after that process and after that structure was in place, and of course with that 2014 analysis that I did, I went back a year prior to that, which was 2013. And I looked at all of the meetings that we had in 2013, and the average length of the meetings at that time was about 3 hours and 21 minutes, 50 minutes more than prior to us going to this new council meeting setup. And so with that, we want to take a look at really the public agenda and whether or not the public agenda as it currently stands have anything to do with the length of the meetings. And so that's what I'm just going to go over with you this evening, just to kind of talk about the role that that plays. And in the current process, of course, if an individual want to be listed on the public agenda, they will contact the clerk's office at prior to noon, 12 noon on the Friday that they want to appear at that council meeting. And so again, 12 noon on that Friday before the appearance on public agenda. An application is submitted, and then, of course, they will appear on any issue that they wish to speak of, and they have 5 minutes, and then an additional 5 minutes is added to, if granted. And so they can get up to 10 minutes to speak on the public agenda. We surveyed a number of other cities, and you have a copy of that last page there of about 13 different cities that we surveyed. But here for this presentation, we're just going to look at 6 of those 13. And just to see what they do in terms of their public agenda. And you can see these cities here that we looked at. Savannah, Georgia, they speak at the end of council meeting, and their time is determined by the city manager. Atlanta, Georgia, you have to sign up 30 minutes right before council in order to speak, and it's only 3 minutes. Augusta, Georgia, you can speak at a council meeting or a committee meeting for 5 minutes. Athens, Georgia, citizens are heard on the first Tuesday of the month, only for 3 minutes. Birmingham, Alabama, the same as Atlanta, signing up 30 minutes prior to council, and they're able to speak for 3 minutes. Charlotte, North Carolina, they can sign up 30 minutes before council and speak for 3 minutes. If the item is on the agenda, they're heard during that discussion, and if not, they will be heard at the end of the meeting. In terms of our 2014, and I just went back and looked at a full year of our council meetings and our public agenda appearances. In 2014, we had 125 people to come and stand before you on public agenda. And of those 125 persons, 53 of them spoke on citywide issues which were in the realm of your authority. About 64 of them spoke on public service announcements, and or they came as nonprofit organizations telling you about events or inviting you to particular events. So that's 64. And then the other, about 8 or so, came on employee concerns. And so the majority of these that came on public agenda in 2014, if you will, were feel-good kinds of issues, events and invitations, public service announcements. And so what we're looking to do, and just for your consideration, is we are proposing some type of a criteria for public agenda appearances. First of all, it would not change in terms of how they get on the public agenda. They would still have to go through the clerk's office. They would still have to complete that application prior to 12 noon on Friday before their appearance. So nothing would change there. If the item is on first reading, they would not need at all to sign up for, to be on the agenda or public agenda to be heard. And as it is currently, there is no time limit if they want to speak on a first reading item. If their appearance is to invite council to an event or share information regarding services or introduce council to a new event, new opportunity, new venture, then of course their appearance would automatically be scheduled for the first Tuesday of the month during the proclamation recognition session. If their appearance is to discuss an item that's currently on the agenda, a previous agenda item, or an issue that council has direct authority over, or an issue with city operations, then they will be placed on the agenda for a second or fourth Tuesday business session, and that would be of their choice. And the other would be that they would be allowed to be heard for 5 minutes on either of those public agendas. So again, these are just some proposed solutions, some things for your consideration. So that's where we are. If there are any questions, yes.
Let's see, Lisa, a couple things. I think Councilor Woodson had a question, but I just want to remind everybody the 5 minutes on public agenda, What was happening previously is that we had a 5-minute time limit, and then every single time, someone would say, oh, I need more time, and council would just immediately give them 5 more minutes. Unless, of course, unless they were a frequent flyer and were upset over the same thing. And then that person didn't get an automatic renewal. And so there was a lot of discussion about the fact that we gave automatic renewals to people we liked and didn't give automatic renewals of 5 more minutes to people. So sort of the, I think, compromise at that time, which I well remember, was that we would do the 5 minutes, give them a warning, ask them to wrap it up, which does usually result in them wrapping it up in a minute or 2. And I don't think since we've instituted that rule, there's been a single time, not one time, that council is, asked to give the person 15 minutes to talk. So I would just say that we need to think seriously. I'm all for, suggestions and batting this around, but I just think we need to think seriously about going back to a 5-minute if council's going to automatically extend for the people who we want to hear more from.
Right.
So it's just something to think about. Councilor Barnes.
My concern is number 3. Supposing the event comes up at a church, which often does this, often happens, or an organization, that they want to share with the council, and it's after the first. That's a problem.
Well, I think it's all in the planning. I mean, it would really perhaps just be in the planning. If they know that they're going to have an event in August, prior to the first Tuesday of August or afterwards, then they just have to back it up a few weeks.
But that's
I mean,
not-
I understand, things like that are going to
But you
happen.
know as well as I do, Lisa,
Yes.
that's not always the
I know.
case.
Things
With churches,
happen.
things come up, things that
Right.
boards are recommended, and I have a problem with number 3.
Okay.
I'm just voicing
Sure.
because it does happen, and one thing that I do like is that the community informs us council members who represent them of things that are going to be occurring.
Sure.
So I don't want this to be an impediment to the citizens being able to come down here and inform us, because to be perfectly honest with you, 2 things I do like. I like the public agenda, because when people come down here, they have an open forum not only with us, but with the citizens
Sure.
on our viewing. And I think the addition of the 5 minutes has been good, because some people cannot sum up. But not everybody's up to snuff on oratorical skills. So I think that's great. But I do have a big problem with number 3.
Okay. And again, these are just some suggestions.
No,
for you
and
to
I understand
consider.
that.
Sure.
All right, we have Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, at the risk of being contradictory, I kind of like what you've come up with. I think it's, I like what the staff has come up with. I understand what the mayor's saying, and I know that has happened on occasion. But I do think that 5 minutes is enough, and I think when council extends, it's most of the times that I remember it has been instances where people have been asking council to consider something that we can take an action. And most of the extensions have resulted from us trying to gather more information to determine whether or not an action was warranted. As far as number 3, I agree to some degree with Councilor Barnes. I like the idea that people have access to being able to publicize their events. But as far as a notification, I mean, they can email, they can call. I mean, we can find out if something comes up midweek. But I don't think that should preclude them from coming back on the 1st and talk about what they did, because I think the publicity for those organizations is important. I do think that on occasion when there's an issue in the public's mind where we have several people on the public agenda that want to address that, and then there's also 3 or 4 people who want to invite us to something, or we want to recognize somebody, an unsung hero, which is valid and it's very good. I do think sometimes that we may not give them the attention that we probably should, because it's a rather full public agenda. So I understand what Councilor Barnes is saying. I do think we are able to be notified and invited to those things through a number of different ways. And I do like the idea that they're able to celebrate what they have done in the community, and that should continue. I like the idea of it being on the first Tuesday of the month when we typically address all of those issues where we're looking to take an opportunity to thank people for what they're doing. So, but I like it. I understand what the mayor's saying too, but I like what you proposed. In fact, I think we should have suggested that much as in a situation like the gentleman with the taxi cab issue, he basically stood there and said, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to harass you every time until I get what I want. I think there ought to be a limit to how many times they can come by in a quarter. I mean, we can't do it in a month because we only really have 2-3 meetings in a month. But I think you shouldn't be able to come and address the same topic every single week.
Like it.
And in reference to what you're saying, I wasn't talking solely about council members. When people come down here, they know it's a public agenda. They're informing the community. So if someone, and that's where where I think the flaw in number 3 is, if individuals, if something comes up after the first, which often happens in churches and organizations, and they want to let us council members, but I'm also talking in reference to the rest of the community. Because this is.
But don't we scroll those though, don't we? We put it on there and we scroll them on GPTV?
Say what now?
And when somebody has something they want, we put it on CCGTV. Like if they want.
Some of those events we do.
I
Some of them
understand
we
what you're, and I do understand, but I'm trying to understand what your point is with this. I don't understand what you're trying to make.
My point was just that, is exactly as I explained. I think that when we do have a number of folks coming to invite us to a situation, and we've had a number come up where all we want to do is introduce them in a new business, I think that's fine. But 90% of that is not an emergency situation. It can wait to the first of the month. And
Well,
I think that's when it ought to be done.
But I think it's a matter of, my only problem with this is a matter of scheduling, because sometimes it does not always happen that way. And you know, and I think if we're going to have a public agenda, it's the public agenda.
Right.
It should make it be something that the public can work with within the confines of what the public is agreeable with the public or
And
convenient.
I don't disagree. I just think that the original reason for a public agenda is so people could bring things to council that is under council's purview that we would be able to try to address.
And that may be, and it may have morphed into what it is now, but I feel we have a saying in the military, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it works for the public and the public's comfortable, and obviously they are, because we haven't heard anything to the adverse.
And that's the.
And I'm just bringing up my feelings on this here.
And that's the purpose of, I'm sorry.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
fine. We just agree to disagree. I think that it's a good plan to allow a special night for that, just as we do with all the proclamations. I think it fits. It's got synergy. It allows them to utilize that one night for that type of notification. I like it, and I respect Pops more than a lot of folks I know, but we just disagree. Right.
All right, we've got a few others. Councilor Huff.
Deputy City Manager Goodwin. Proposed public agenda criteria, number 1, it says no change. Do we need to insert Friday there? Because it sounds like.
Well, I mean, it would remain the same as it is today, yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm just saying the way it reads. It says no later than 12 noon prior to public agenda appearance.
Right, okay, and so which is a Friday.
Which is
We can,
Friday.
include that, yes.
Okay,
You're right.
so if we put it out, they won't think that they can come in Tuesday
Anytime.
morning for an evening.
That's
meeting.
right, Friday.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Exactly.
Councilor Thomas.
When I first read the suggestion about bringing this, putting these on the first Tuesday agenda, my immediate reaction was, but I don't ever remember us having a full council on that first Tuesday. We may have 5 members, we may have 6, we often do not have a quorum, and I would not, so I had a little concern about that. I do think that there may be times when it would be appropriate to do, to have those on the first Tuesday, but not automatically knock them off of the other meeting days. The other thing that I would like to suggest that we take a look at is to keep the 5-minute max, and when we hit that 5 minutes, instead of giving them another 5 minutes, tell them they have 2 minutes, or they wrap it up, to pull that back somewhat and not do 10 minutes. And I think that tonight's example of when Mr. Tillery was here, that conversation went on much longer than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but it was necessary for us to have that conversation. And I think that that's one of the things that we as counselors need to remember, is that we are here to do the business of the people. And, I know what time it is, and, but that's our commitment, is to do the business of the people. So I'd want us to be real careful making any kind of changes to how we're doing our business now, and make sure that we are allowing the public to address us. I know that there's some public agendas that you can't address the body unless the item that you want to address them is on their agenda for that night. Well, we don't need to go there. We need to let people talk to us as they need to talk with us. I appreciate your efforts on this, Ms. Goodman.
And just to follow up on Councilor Thomas's comment, what I typically do in running the clock and so forth is, if somebody is making their statement, they make their statement for 5 minutes, the alarm goes off, I ask them to wrap up. They either do that quickly or take the whole next 5 minutes. I try not to take any counselor questions during that time, because I want them to extinguish their opportunity to speak. However, when council intervenes and asks a question, or when staff gets up and intervenes, then that releases the 10-minute time period, obviously. And so then you will get, if staff gets to speak and the person, and then council wants to hear from the person who's already spoken for 10 minutes, well, then there you go. It's a full-fledged presentation at that point. But as far as somebody speaking, they would not be allowed to get back up again. At least I wouldn't allow them to get back up. Mayor Pro Tem might do it differently, but. Okay, well, good. I think that's a good conversation. Councilor Huff.
Yes, one last issue. Out of that 125, I was just noticing only basically half of that. 53 citywide issues, and employee issues concerns 8. So we're only looking at about 61 of that 125 that really came in. So that's not much.
That's right.
We're averaging, maybe 4 or 5 a month, 5 a month.
Right.
Of people coming in to address
Yeah, not
us.
very
So
many.
so
Not
we
very
need
many.
to stay available to the people, because the rest of this is public service announcements and nonprofit organizations, and they're here too.
That's right.
But I'm saying, as far as them really needing our ear and our time, it's only half of that. So I think we should have the time for that.
We could.
Thank you.
We could, again, just for consideration, if it's a public service announcement, maybe do 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something. I mean, as long as you all are considering it. Maybe if it's a public service announcement, change the time if it's a citywide issue. So anyway, for you all to consider. All right, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Does that conclude your agenda?
I do want to mention that we did hand out a copy of the proposed legislative agenda to you. I will also email that to you if you would like that as well. But I've just placed it around the table. And as you know, it will be October the 16th at the Trade Center. And if you have any concerns about the items that are listed, please let us know. And, or if there are other items that you want to add, or any of those that you want to delete before we actually do the final document, please let us know.
But we'll be going over this at the work session, and
On
then
the
council
29th.
will vote on the specific items on the 13th.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. 11:30, I think. Is it 11:30? Yes. Thanks.
All right, that concludes the city manager's agenda. Is that correct, Pam? Thank you. And with that, then, we'll turn it over to the clerk of council, Tiny Washington. Ms. Washington.
Madam Mayor and Council, on the clerk's agenda, items 1 through 7 is for the council's information. Items 8 and 9 are letter resignations from John Miller, resigning from the Board of of the Convention and Visitors Board of Commissioners, and Mr. Joseph Smith resigning from the Pension Board. I need a motion to receive these.
We've got a motion that the minutes be received in a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Now, that was a motion to receive the resignations.
Oh, hold on a minute. What was,
That was a motion to receive those resignations. Now I need a motion to receive the minutes.
Second.
okay, now we've got a motion that the minutes be received and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our Animal Control Advisory Board, we have some upcoming vacancies on the Animal Control Advisory Board. Ms. Becky Carter, she is eligible to serve again if someone would like to renominate her. And Ms. Joe McDaniel is not eligible. Counselor Barnes is nominating Mr. Timothy Butts. No. We're not confirming today. He's just nominating. And we are making contact with our Veterinary Association to see if they want Dr. McDermott to continue on the Board of Honor. Mr. Milton Hirsch, he is eligible if someone wants to renominate him. On the Columbus Ironworks Convention and Trade Center, the mayor is renominating Mr. Michael Knox, and he can be confirmed.
It's a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
On the House Bill Authority, we have some upcoming vacancies that will be coming up in November. Mr. Ernest Smallman, Mr. Edward Gaffney, they both are eligible. We need 3 nominees in which we will forward to the authority for them to select.
Would they like to serve again?
I will make contact to see if they would. On the Housing Authority, the mayor is renominating Ms. Bankston. She can be confirmed.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
On the Land Bank Authority, Mr. Lance Hemmings is eligible to succeed himself. I will check to see if he wants to serve again. Then on our Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, Councilor Woodson.
I received a nominee, but he doesn't live in my district. So
Okay,
we have to go back to Keep Columbus to see who
okay. And we'll bring this back.
does not live in the district.
On the Region 6 Advisory Board, the mayor is nominating Ms. Cynthia Smith. We'll bring this back for confirmation at our next meeting. I'm sorry, I apologize. The Mayor Pro Tem, it's late and I'm tired. On the Pension Board, the mayor is nominating Ms. Cook. She can be confirmed.
Second.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And
And
tax,
Tiny, we got you another resignation and nominee, did we not? For the pension fund board?
right, we did receive the resignation of Mr. Joseph Smith, but I did not receive a nominee.
Okay, all right, we'll get that next time then.
Okay. We're still working with the Taxi Cab Commission to get those seats replaced. Uptown Facade Board, these are representatives representing the Uptown Business Association, and we will make contact with the organization and see if they want these individuals to continue to represent them. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
You know, Tiny, I'm just very concerned about this taxi cab commission. Do you mean that there's not a single hotel or motel industry representative? And I don't know how that's defined, but for goodness sake, it seems like it could be a
Well-
manager, an owner, I mean...
We've certainly been trying, Madam Mayor, unfortunately.
Well, let's just put out a call. If you know somebody who works in the hotel industry who wouldn't mind serving on the taxi cab commission, have them call 311 and ask for Tiny. And then what about taxi cab drivers? If you're a taxi cab driver or owner, no, you don't have to be an owner, just a taxi cab
Just a
driver
driver.
representative. Or know somebody who's a taxi cab driver.
Okay. we will-
Please dial 311 and ask for Tiny. I mean, it's been like a year, for goodness sake. It's fine, I'm going to take out an ad in the paper. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry, Tiny.
I'm done, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Tiny. Counselor Woodson.
Mayor, I was just going to ask, but you did a lovely job in asking about the taxi in the hotel. I know a couple of people, so I'm going to call them and
Yeah.
ask them.
Good. I bet Counselor Davis could find somebody in the hotel room.
He sure can.
Well, Madam Mayor, we'll get with Mike King
He
to
ain't
put
even
out a
paying no
notice,
attention.
see if we can get someone.
That's all right, I'm telling you. Let's see, we got Counselor Thomas.
All right, time to go to executive session.
Ms. Washington, on the facade board, are those the Uptown Business Association, is that the bid folks, and then Uptown Columbus is the separate organization? So are there two there, or is all of that the same?
It's all the same, Councilor Thomas.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes our business agenda. We do, however, have a request from the city attorney for an executive session related to litigation matters. There's been a motion and there's a second. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, we are in executive session. Please clear the chambers.
No, that's recycling.
All right, we are back from an executive session where no votes were taken. It was an executive session on litigation matters. And with that, our business is concluded. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, we'll see you next Tuesday for a work session. Thank you.